Yes. When you wake up and you feel like you need a little up, when you're down and out and you need to get a little higher, if you feel like you need a blessing and you feel a little high today, welcome to the church of Cali High. Cali High. Cali High. Yo!
Welcome to Cali High, episode 40. This week, Cali High sits down to have a most enlightening talk with Ellen Komp and Ian Rassman from the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, otherwise known as NORML. Ellen is with the California chapter of NORML, and Ian is from the Los Angeles chapter. NORML is largely responsible for you being able to legally smoke cannabis, as they have been around for 51 years trying to change cannabis laws around our cities, states, and country. While largely an advocacy group for individuals' cannabis rights, NORML works with other commercial cannabis proponents, such as the United Cannabis Business Association here in Los Angeles, to reform tax and access laws concerning cannabis. We learn about evolving legislation and nonprofit viability in a world of multi-state operators, and put things in perspective for you in an ever-changing cannabis world. If you are involved with cannabis, this episode is essential. Good morning. Cali High is blessed to be here with Cal NORML and LA NORML. And in case you guys don't know what NORML is, it's the National Organization for Relief of Marijuana Laws. And we operate on national, local, and state levels, right? So
that is true.
I'm here with Ellen and Ian.
It's the reform of marijuana laws, but I like relief. We might have to start that other
Oh, did I say relief? Reform. I knew that. Yeah. So welcome, guys. Thanks for visiting Cali High today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So the first question I have is from our listeners, and most of them probably weren't even alive when you were founded. So this year you'll be turning 51, Ian just told me. And so who is NORML?
NORML was started in 1970 by a man named Keith Stropp, a lawyer who went around advocating for decriminalization laws in the states. At the time, you could go to jail for a joint.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I know.
right. And he was influenced by Ralph Nader and people like that,
mm-hmm.
and started, the first advocacy organization for marijuana smokers. And that's who we continue to be today, advocating first and foremost for the cannabis consumer, for our rights.
Mm-hmm.
First for legalization, which we sort of have in California now. There's still some work to be done in the areas of, say, employment rights and other things. We can talk about that at length if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And as well as sort of watchdogging this whole industry that's popping up now, trying to keep it fair and equitable in this hyper-capitalistic world that we live in.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and
taxes are out of control. Prices are skyrocketing.
Yeah. I've been advocating for, the small farmer who just always ought to be legal and, just like a wine grape grower is or something like that. And instead, there are many bars to licensing that are hard to meet, especially for, people without money and people of color and things like that.
Yeah.
So, as human rights advocates, we're watchdogging that. For example, there are 60 bills again this year in the California legislature just about regulating the cannabis industry. And now the hemp industry is coming in and
mm-hmm.
all kinds of different wrinkles around that. But mostly at the state level, which is what I do most of the time, we're trying to pass, and have been for the last several years, an Employment Rights Act. Despite marijuana being legal now recreationally in California, we don't have employment protections either for people using marijuana recreationally or for medical purposes, off the job even.
Yeah.
Because these horrible urine tests can detect use days or weeks before, same with hair tests. And so we've written a very specific bill that we're advancing. That's a 2-year bill we're going to have hearings on next year to outlaw job discrimination based on these bogus urine and hair tests that have no correlation with any kind of on-the-job impairment. This issue has exploded, as you probably know, in the last
shout
week
out to Sha'Carri Richardson.
Yes. So she has been banned from, now it comes out entirely from the Olympic team, based on the fact that she had a positive marijuana test after she won her 100-meter race, for which she holds the world's record. Mm-hmm. And so this is very emblematic of the problem that we have. We're excluding a lot of our best and brightest talent based on some kind of test that has no correlation for your job performance, whether you're, working in a manufacturing facility or running track.
Yeah.
And there's been a huge outcry of support for her. There's been, she smoked it in Oregon where it's legal. Mm-hmm. And it's legal in so much of the country. 92% of people in the latest poll support either recreational or medical marijuana. So does Sha'Carri Richardson represent the U.S.? Yes, indeed she does.
I think she does. Yeah. Well, the IOC is out of step with the world. And definitely
and
weed
so
legalization.
Are a lot of employers. Now, you may have heard Amazon just announced they're not going to drug test for marijuana anymore.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
partly
I heard
because they've been sued many times in a lot of the states where they're at, because several other states, 21 states now, have some protections for medical patients on the job. Mm-hmm. Or, if they use it off the job, they're protected on the job, I guess I should say. And 5 states now, Connecticut being the latest, also protect recreational workers' rights specifically in their laws. And Connecticut's law specifically talks about how a urine test is not proof of impairment, which it absolutely is not. So we're trying to move employers away from the idea that they're doing anything for workplace safety with the drug testing the way they're doing it now. All they're doing is discriminating against people who, they ought to be part of their worker pool.
Uh-huh. Well, when you're doing manual labor and repetitive tasks, if you get a little buzzed, it seems a little easier, Arnold
Schwarzenegger said it.
Productivity could go up.
It helps with the reps, he said, for
absolutely.
weightlifting.
Absolutely.
He's a guy who, Schwarzenegger vetoed our first employment rights law that we passed in 2008 in California.
Hypocrite.
Himself, a former admitted pot smoker.
So
you can't count on that.
That would be for the state, right? For the state's employees?
Yes.
Yeah, and all those cannabis employees.
Well, for anyone who works. Actually, interestingly that you mentioned that, the California State Personnel Board, an entity I'd never heard of before, they just came out with a ruling saying that a California Department of Transportation employee could not be fired from his job based on a positive urine test because, again, they said urine test does not prove impairment, and just calling him safety sensitive isn't going to wash either. Mm-hmm. The fact that he used it off the job doesn't mean he's showing up to work impaired, and they reinstated him to his job.
Yeah.
So we figure that ruling is going to protect state employees. It's not going to protect city or county employees, and it's not going to protect employees in California who work for private companies. So that's what we're trying to do, is protect the rest of those employees.
Excellent. So let me ask another question here. As cannabis has become legal, who has been NORML's best allies, would you say?
Well, Ian could answer this too, because he's worked with a lot of, the cannabis industry.
Down here in LA. Yeah,
now,
so Ian
has started to become, a force in it. There are other advocacy organizations we've traditionally worked with, ACLU and other marijuana-based organizations. There's something called Americans for Safe Access that advocates specifically for medical.
Absolutely.
The Drug Policy Alliance, which advocates for all drug legalization, but also marijuana. And there other groups have popped up sort of to solve issues as they come up, like the Last Prisoner Project has come up, and they're trying to get all the marijuana prisoners out of prison. We're advocating for one right now, Luke Scaramazzo, who's the last known federal medical marijuana prisoner. Although I just heard from a lawyer this morning who said there are others he knows of around cultivation in the Eastern District that I may have to be adding, sadly, to that list.
Interesting.
Yeah.
May they be out soon.
But yeah, the industry has come in. Largely, they're concerned about so much taxation and regulation on their front, largely having to be concerned about it. But I keep trying to tell them, well, you need to also be advocating for your customer, for the consumer. And a lot of them do. A lot of them get it.
So, Ian, did you end up working with the UCBA and getting cannabis declared essential down here?
Yes, we did. We sent, and UCBA is a fantastic organization.
United Cannabis Business Association, President Jared Kyla. We've interviewed him.
I actually was at his store yesterday. We went up there. We had a little dispensary tour that we had organized.
Shout out to the Higher Path.
Yeah, shout out to the Higher Path, and really Jared's been doing a lot of work for decades, starting up there with Ellen up in the Bay Area. 20 years ago or something, right? Ellen's been a long time up there.
No, they pretty much started in LA, I think. They do have a Bay Area presence now. And then there's also the California Cannabis Industry Association and other more specific groups, manufacturers and farmers and things like that. But we have worked with UCBA too on things.
So we did send very early on in the first few days when the state of California was starting to lock down. I believe San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, you guys had petitioned the local municipalities to declare cannabis essential. As soon as we saw San Francisco declare cannabis essential, we immediately ripped out a letter to Mayor Garcetti and requested as well that cannabis be declared essential during the pandemic. And about 24 hours later, from multiple groups that had contacted him, they in fact did come out and declare cannabis essential in LA.
Well, that was one of the happier days around here during the pandemic.
It was a domino effect. I mean, we saw very, very rapidly, and I do believe San Francisco was first, and LA came very fast after that to declare cannabis essential. But it was a domino effect across the country. Pretty much every single state that had medical cannabis laws immediately popped with the same response. Oh, it's essential here as well. And then what we saw happen during the pandemic is that, what became essential for people was toilet paper, whiskey, wine, and weed.
Or beer.
We're going crazy to get it. And I think, 2020 was, I think sales every year getting bigger and bigger in California, but I think 2020 was just off the hook.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think my own... Excuse me, Ellen, but I think my own consumption increased.
Let me just say, the essential thing happened really around medical because what happened in San Francisco is San Francisco Health Department immediately came out and said, oh, no, cannabis isn't essential. We're going to close down all the dispensaries. And so that was a reactive thing that we did, which, unfortunately, we're still doing a lot of reactive stuff. And we got... all cannabis declared essential because since recreational has been legalized, the medical and recreational markets have merged on every level, from the beginning to end. And so you can't really just say you can only leave a medical store open because all the patients are getting, pretty much in California, all the patients are getting their medicine at a recreational legal shop.
Yeah, and what about the medical patients that might have let their card lapse?
Yeah, and most patients have since the time that recreational happened, because, I mean, if you have the ID card, which is very troublesome to get from the county, you can get a sales tax exemption. But other than that, there's really not much advantage to it. And you can buy some higher potency products, and in some places, maybe you can grow more if you're a medical patient. But other than that, there aren't a lot of advantages to still, bothering to go out and go to a doctor and get that card. The other thing I wanted to say about the essential thing is, I think our governor, Gavin Newsom, really took a hit off of that because, as you probably know, he's going to be subject to a recall campaign on September 14th. And I think one reason is he closed churches as non-essential. But the criticism of him has been that, well, he left cannabis stores open, but he closed churches.
Oh, they didn't bother to complain about the liquor stores?
Yeah, right. Oh, no. Yeah. Well, liquor stores can sell other essential things. Yeah. But cannabis stores still can't. You can't sell anything but cannabis in a cannabis store right now, which is stupid, and you can't.
What's in the cannabis store is way more essential than the liquor store.
Yeah. So the cannabis industry should really get out and support Gavin Newsom against this recall, because there's no other candidate, at least so far. We're going to be putting out some information about it, but at least so far, there's no other candidate who's any better on cannabis than Newsom is. And I think one reason for that, for the recall gaining steam, is because of his essential designation of cannabis. And he came out also and extended all the ID cards, all those county health department issued ID cards. He extended those indefinitely through the pandemic, and was very responsive to us when we reached out to his office about that. Yeah. So he's been for many years an anti-drug war warrior, and
that's a double negative.
Commissioned a blue ribbon commission on cannabis legalization and backed Prop 64 for legalization. I mean, he has been a champion for us. Yeah.
So, Cali High supports Governor Newsom.
Okay. I'm sure we got to hear
it's not going to be. It's not going to be successful, but it's a pain in the ass to have to go through the recall. That is. So, what has LA NORML been up to recently?
So really our greatest, one of our biggest initiatives right now is pushing forward on some amazing legislation here in California that's truly world first legislation. So are you familiar with SB 34, Senate Bill SB 34?
Why don't you tell our listeners, and I might have to profess a little ignorance myself.
No problem. Let's assume that we all need a little bit of a refresher, and I'm happy to. So SB 34 went active in March of last year, just as the pandemic was beginning. The SB 34 legislation went active, and what it allows the licensed supply chain industry, what it allows them to do is donate medical cannabis. Now, the bill is called the Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary Act, which of course harks back to those two amazing pioneers who, we can't forget really where the cannabis culture comes from in California. And, before we got to this legalization in 1996, the industry was donating medical cannabis to AIDS patients in San Francisco. This was a big thing. And when we legalized cannabis in 1996, that came off of the table and people were not allowed to donate anymore. You absolutely could not donate. It was absolutely forbidden by the law. So now SB 34 goes back and makes a little correction to that, so that the licensed supply chain can donate to people on a compassionate basis. So maybe it's veterans with PTSD, maybe it's AIDS patients that are suffering, maybe cancer patients suffering, lupus, Crohn's disease, any of the multitude of things that cannabis has been known to alleviate. Now the licensed supply chain can deduct the taxes that they would have paid the state of California off of product that they tag SB 34 in metric. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So if you properly coordinate this across the supply chain with the cultivators, the manufacturers, the distributors, the testers, and the retailers, you get to deduct each one of those taxes from the product. So now you have expensive cannabis product where all the California state tax has been cut right off of the top of it. So now it's really your true cost as a company to generate that product and to give it away. So it's an amazing mission of love, light, and medicine. I think after a very tough year, and it's really resonating with the industry here in California. We've had a truly amazing success at reaching out to the industry and telling them about this legislation and encouraging them to use it and to donate. And so we've been doing donation events all across Southern California now. We're doing it in 6 counties, and we're currently donating medical cannabis to over 400 patients a month right now.
That's excellent.
We're trying to get that number. I'd like to see that number hit 4,000 by the end of the year. We're on a pretty good path. We're picking up, multiple dispensaries every month. We have a lot of the industry has come out to support it. They understand that this is a mission of love and light. And it's really, once you pull the California state tax off of things, it actually really becomes affordable to donate products. And what we've been encouraging.
That's excellent to get the tax deduction.
Yeah, and we've been encouraging these businesses to put on an event, like
Mm-hmm.
you're a dispensary, do a parking lot pop up where you pop up. The brands will come and bring their tents. Maybe you get a taco truck, a little bit of entertainment, and on a Saturday from like I don't know 12 to 4 or something, you do a cannabis donation event. You target veterans or this or that.
Uh-huh. I'm a veteran.
There you go. Thank you for your service.
Anybody wants to donate some cannabis to me?
Well, you come check out our
There we go.
website.
Yeah. Cali High will definitely give you a full report.
Check out. So here's the funny thing, Vincent. We're actually reaching the tipping point on this, where we have more companies and brands participating than, believe it or not, veterans willing to show up and get the medicine. So we're just starting to hit that tipping point where we do need the message to get out to
Well, I'll be glad to help you.
Well, there you go. You got to make it down here to Southern California. Come down to one of our events. They're really every week now, scattered all across the Southland. And I got to tell you, it's truly amazing to go. You really should come and see one of these events.
You'll send me a link or an address, and I'll come on down.
Go to our website, lanormal.org.
Yeah,
NORML. Go there. Follow us on social media, and we list them out on social media where they are and how to register. But to attend one of these events and just to watch the veterans or the patients coming through and picking up a bag of medicine and watching them open it and seeing what's in there, and they start pulling things out, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to help me sleep, and this thing for that, and this thing for that. And like, you see them starting to get weepy in the eyes.
Yeah. Well,
like, they can't afford it. Like, this is real medicine, and it's very expensive. And now they're getting a bag of it for free from a dispensary.
Hardly anybody gives anybody any weed for free.
No, this is really for free. So on a per event basis, we target about 25 patients per event, and we target a bag of somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $500 worth of cannabis products. So you get that. That makes a big difference
for each individual.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
That is something not to be sneezed at.
I'm telling you, Brad, we're doing 400 patients a month right now through this program, and rapidly expanding. There's truly nobody in the industry that I haven't spoken to that doesn't immediately get excited about this. I mean, really energized, and with the point of, oh, this is amazing. We want to participate. What do we need to do? How can we do this? And everybody recognizes it for the mission of love that it is. But really, on top of that, you have to put a little bit of a business spin on everything. So I try to explain to all of the industry that participates that, yes, you're doing a great thing, but in addition to doing a great thing, you're actually doing a smart business thing.
Because they're getting a little exposure for doing a good karma 100%. Maneuver, and hello.
100%. What you have here is you have a corporate social responsibility tool in a box, right? Like, this is a way for you to demonstrate to your community what you do. Why are you a good company? Why should our community care about you as a dispensary? Oh, great, you sell cannabis, but what are you doing for us? Yeah, we understand we're collecting some tax revenue, but what are you doing for the people that live here? The poor and the downtrodden and the economically disadvantaged and the people that needed a medical necessity. So people have really been adopting this mission. It's really a unifying mission that's truly bringing everybody together. And what it helps do is it helps bridge industry to the consumers. And as Ellen mentioned, NORML is a consumer-focused industry. We're very focused on the consumer. The industry, they're there, but that's not. There are plenty of associations that fight for industry, right, what they want. That's not what we do.
I reached out to my friend Armin Peroni of LA Cannabis. I go, do you work with Cal NORML or LA NORML? He goes, well, they're mostly a patient advocacy organization, but we have worked with them occasionally. And he's also on the board at UCBA. Yeah.
Right, and who are their customers? Someone said to me, we need the NRA of cannabis. And I said, oh, but that's normal. But we don't get millions of dollars from manufacturers like, the NRA does. I wanted to mention, first clarify.
I'm not sure I go for that analogy, however.
Yeah, I know. Well, we are the consumer. Well,
I know you are, actually.
NRA advocates for gun owners in the way that
but it's such a better karma organization than the NRA.
Personally, I'm no fan of the NRA.
You guys are responsible for 0 deaths.
Exactly. Very different. But I wanted to clarify a couple of things. Well, first, I mean, NORML itself doesn't give away, no chapter gives away any pot itself, or we don't sell it or anything. It is legal to give away up to an ounce. Anybody can give away up to an ounce. But what happened with the industry is if they wanted to give it away, they had to pay a tax on it because there was no mechanism by which they could exempt from it. And so that's what SB 34 cleared up. Did you see, Ian, I just put out in my weekly email, the included in SB 34, the Legislative Analyst Office was required to put out a report on the tax exemptions and how much tax income was lost. This was a concern that we were contacted about when SB 34 was there. Oh, we're going to lose a lot of tax income and everything. We're like, these are indigent patients who can't afford to buy it in the first place. So no, I don't really think so. So
yeah, it's like workers that won't go back to work because they got their stimulus check,
Yeah.
Hello.
But anyway, the LAO came out with this report and found they tracked 13,278 reported transactions, not patients, but transactions. So one patient could have had more than one transaction, that were medicinal donations in 2020. They estimated that revenue loss for cultivation tax was roughly $400,000. And the sales and use tax exemption, roughly $120,000. Now, you got to put that in the context of there was $143 million collected in cultivation tax in 2020 for cannabis, and $390 million in use tax, plus $560 million in state excise tax, which wasn't touched at all, for a total of $1.1 billion. So the tax loss was like in the area of 0.03%.
Yeah, they're going to complain about that. Yeah, I don't think so.
So as we predicted.
Yeah.
And so, and that was a bill Gavin Newsom signed. It took him 2 years to sign it, but he did sign it. In the end, I think maybe the tax loss was what they were worried about. But so it's great that those programs are popping up. And veterans are one group that's been very strong for us advocating in Sacramento. They've turned a lot of Republican legislators around on SB 34. Took some doing. So please do what you can to get the word out in LA and the veterans community. What 5 counties are you doing it in, Ian?
Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, and Inland Empire.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
That's excellent.
Donation. Yeah, we're covering most of the Southland. I mean, covering is a hard word to say when you're only doing about approximately one event per week, but we're really ramping it up. And our partners are ramping up the number of donations that they're doing per month and ramping up the number of patients that they serve at each event.
Oh, yeah. So it's growing. That's an amazing thing. Cannabis keeps people off of drugs, helps them to get off of drugs, helps them to sleep.
A great program that you can point. There's Ellen's probably more up to speed on the numbers than I am, but a substantial amount of California doesn't allow for cannabis in their cities, and this is a program that you can hold up as a model and tell these cities that are not really participating yet, hey, it's not all as bad as you think, and you have a real opportunity here to make an impact in your communities on a good thing.
Yeah.
So I really think it's
Ellen,
a solid mission to bring people together.
Is that being worked on statewide as well?
Well, you mean donating statewide?
Being able to,
legislation is already...
It already is statewide, yeah.
Covered border to border within California. And I'll remind you, nowhere else in the world can you donate medical cannabis. There isn't any country or state anywhere where this can be done. So this is truly a world's first program in California. And, we need to hold it up as such, as an example to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world. If you're going to, I truly believe, if you're going to give out cannabis licenses to people, you should ask the people that you're giving the licenses, what are you going to do in our community? What are you going to do here in this little community? If we give you a license, are you going to help our community pick up the people that need help and assistance? Are you going to be part of that? So I really think that there should be some component of giving back for the people that give licenses. And I think that this is a great
social activity.
That actually is in place in Berkeley. Berkeley dispensaries are required to have a giveaway program. And I think Colorado might have just passed a law to allow for donations. Colorado or some other state. I'm pretty focused on California, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to what Ian said about Dennis Perone and Brownie Mary, a lot of people might not know those names anymore, but Dennis was an AIDS activist in San Francisco. And a big reason that we have medical marijuana is because of his work and the work of Brownie Mary, who she got her name from. She would give out brownies in AIDS wards in San Francisco.
Hot brownies.
And this was, people were literally dying of starvation, unable to, keep their appetite up with AIDS. And it was a life-saving measure, similar to the way that the AIDS community was activating for AZT and other medications. In fact, they were first called buyers clubs, like the Dallas Buyers Club that you probably heard. So we're actually having this year, this November 5th, is the 25th anniversary of the passage of Prop 215 in California.
Oh, yeah.
And in 1996. And California NORML's having a big blowout party in San Francisco on that day. Everyone should try and come and learn about what brought us here and what we still need to do to help the patients that, and the people that these laws are meant to serve, because it's never over. It's a lot about the implementation of a law. I mean, as soon as we passed Prop 215, I thought my work was over.
No,
oh, you don't like a law,
beginning.
little girl, you change it. Well, I did change it. But oh my, did they come after us? Dan Lundgren, who was then the AG, held meetings and tried to limit it in every way that he could. I have a letter still from my then Congressman Walter Capps, who said, well, as you know, Prop 215 has been ruled unconstitutional by the courts. That had not happened. That my congressman was misinformed. The sheriffs were going around saying cultivation wasn't included, and we're still trying to fight for cultivation on the local level, where it's been eroded, especially, unfortunately, since Prop 64 passed with its 6-plant limit. Prop 64 requires locals to allow 6 plants, but allows them to drive them indoors and put all kinds of other reasonable regulations on them. And we've had to go to battle on one place in the Inland Empire was trying to require criminal background checks to grow 6 plants for yourself.
That should be unconstitutional there in some way.
We did prevail in that case, but the implementation has been slow on that. In that Fontana, it was.
Fontana.
And in some other places there.
Yeah, there's some real, well, I'd say not so enlightened places in California concerning cannabis.
Very true. When I go to like national conferences, people are like, "Oh, it's a piece of cake out there in California." It's like, "Oh no!" I mean, we passed Prop 8, the anti-gay initiative in California.
Devin Nunes in California. So that should say something right there.
Right.
Yeah. At least we don't have Ted Cruz. So, how is NORML? The state funding for NORML is separate from the national, and is the city funding separate from the state? And do you guys depend on donations primarily? How does this work?
Yeah, people tend to think we get money from national NORML, but the opposite is true. We're grassroots in every sense of the word. Every chapter is required to fundraise for our national home mother office, which is like filled with amazing people who do so much more than is humanly possible.
Shout out to the national.
They get.
We'll get them on next time.
Yeah, and so we're all required to fundraise for ourselves. We don't get anything from national, and like I said, we're required to help them out. Members and business members from the business community now are our donors. NORML has some help from people like Rick Steves, the PBS travel host, is now the chair of the board of directors of NORML. He sent out something on the 50th anniversary of the war on drugs, which just happened, to all his supporters, and
that's
got
cool.
some generated donations that way. So
beautiful,
we can get
beautiful
more.
Article. That was beautiful what Rick wrote on that article. He was so spot on.
Yeah, he's awesome. He talks about sort of inner and outer travel, and but our former director of NORML just noticed his name on their member rules one day and reached out to him and stuff. And he's been getting more and more involved. He's very instrumental in getting it to pass in Washington, where he lives.
Should I know this like fellow? Who is it?
Oh, he does a travel show on PBS. very much about, kind of backpacking your way through Europe.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And stuff like that.
Well, remember the guy that did California Gold? I forget his name.
No, that's a similar show.
Different. Yeah,
similar show, but that's not Rick.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to copy that format for Cali High, traveling
Really?
to every farm and yeah.
Rick's really wrote an amazing article. If you can go to normal.org, and read that, and it's great. He really hits upon a lot of the points of prohibition that were of racist origin, and really, it's just a great article. Check it out. He's
okay.
Really good.
I will put a link right here, folks.
He's been a great supporter of NORML. Yeah, but to follow on to what Ellen said, not only are all the chapters expected to send money to national to support the national effort, which is truly a worthy cause, and I'll echo what Ellen said, amazingly talented people over there pushing forward on the cannabis reform laws for us. But all chapters do their own fundraising. And truthfully, when you get down into many of the chapters that are across the country, it's really built by all volunteers. I mean, like our team at Los Angeles NORML, absolutely every single person on the team is a volunteer. Not one person makes $1 from being a part of the organization. Everybody's motivated to make a difference. Most of our team does work in the industry doing this thing or that thing. But they have a vested interest to see consumer rights protected. And they're all working in the space, but everybody is absolutely a volunteer. And I think Ellen and myself, we are always appreciative of receiving people's energy to help push forward on the cannabis reform. This is the people's movement. This is we the people. It has been for 50 years. People need this. We need that. So it's really a volunteer, really an all volunteer organization doing what we can to try and raise money to, send nationally to support the lobbyists that we do.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that without you guys, probably we wouldn't have recreational cannabis at this point. Is that a stretch?
I don't think so. I mean,
you guys set the foundation up for
just to have
changing.
Someone there like countering the constant barrage of negative information that's out there with sound science. We have one guy on our staff, Paul Armentano, who his job is just to read all the studies that come out and publish something. And he's just sent me a review copy of he does a booklet every year of all the new medical studies that have come out, because it's especially happening now at the local level. And we have several local chapters around the state. In Inland Empire, there's one. Central Valley, there's one. Of course, LA, Orange County. Our opponents are showing up at the local level, trying to keep cannabis licensing from happening with reefer madness arguments like from 1939. You just couldn't even believe that in this day and age it's still happening. And a lot of our supporters think, oh, well, the job's over. We passed this state law. And it's like, no, nothing could be further from the truth. Something like 2/3 of the state is still not licensing cannabis businesses. And now we have to
2/3 of the state is not licensing cannabis businesses.
Majority of California.
Yes.
Oh wow. So a lot of
because they have
interstate
to get local
cannabis tourism.
So but it's starting to change. When alcohol prohibition was repealed, it took a while. There used to be wet counties and dry counties. If you the two of you probably wanted to remember, but I would hear about from my grandmother, and
there were still wet counties and dry counties when I was growing up back east. And
there are a few. Yeah. There are a few, I think, to this day.
I didn't grow up back east, but my grandparents lived there. But anyway, shout out to Clarence Barber.
So we have to really turn our supporters out at the local level, asking for safe access to this. Consumption rooms. Now that COVID's just about over, we hope, we want to start advocating for more places where you could go and consume it in public. Because how legal is it really if you can go into a store that looks more like a bank, buy your little stash and go home and smoke it if your landlord lets you smoke it in your apartment, which a lot of cases is not true.
Or your wife.
And it's just so anathema to the whole social aspect of cannabis that we love to share it together, smoke it together. I see your Bob Marley poster, go to your reggae concert and smoke it,
Absolutely.
That's what it's about,
Absolutely.
we still have a ways to go, and there's been so much focus on just getting the regulation part down that we've kind of, it's been hard to get back on the page with the human rights that still need to happen. Like I mentioned, employment rights, tenants' rights, having a place where you can go and smoke it. Those are three of the things that we still have to work for from a consumer perspective.
To Ellen's point, really becomes about access. So last year, the city of West Hollywood, which has the first consumption lounge anywhere in the country.
Shout out to West Hollywood.
Yeah. But the city of West Hollywood, after they put forth the first consumption lounge in the whole country, decided that they were going to implement a no smoking ban in all multi-family units. So that's condos, apartments, anything but a private house. They were going to put a smoking ban, including medical cannabis, vaping, everything. So, like what Ellen said a minute ago, can you imagine like going into West Hollywood, of which there's plenty of dispensaries, and buying your product? Now, you're not allowed to smoke it on the sidewalk. You're not allowed to be out in public with it. See, and you can't smoke it where you bought it. So if you own your own home in West Hollywood, you could go there and do it. But if you were not wealthy enough to own your own home, well, you could buy it, but you could not use it. Literally,
that's lame.
You had no place to go use it. You'd have to leave West Hollywood and go somewhere.
Yeah, we had to fight that off in West Hollywood. West Hollywood tried to pass an ordinance like banning all smoking, including cannabis smoking, in all new apartment buildings. I think.
And you were successful in preventing that?
Yeah, but it's happening in other places.
You know what?
So we need more grassroots organizing everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
The city council 3 to 5 voted that they would exempt marijuana after NORML and many other organizations all petitioned them to point out the craziness of this. Mm-hmm. And they did make a medical. They made an exception.
This is another thing that's happening. Our opponents and also the health departments of California at the state level and the local level are all like so rampant anti-smoking, and they're very well funded because they make a huge amount from each pack of cigarette that's bought in California. And they're going around sort of equating cannabis secondhand smoke with tobacco, or in general cannabis smoke, and the studies aren't there to prove it. But unless we have advocates at the local level fighting again, they even showed up in Berkeley where they were trying to open up a consumption lounge. Mm-hmm. The public health people showed up and said, "Oh no, we can't because the secondhand smoke is harmful, or it's going to leak into the next apartment building or something." And so, and actually, it's better to do smoke it when you're out in public rather than take an edible, because an edible can hit you later when you're maybe driving home in your car.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
absolutely.
Low-dose edibles are one thing, but I'm not actually for high-dose edibles in restaurants and stuff. But
no.
Not beginner fare.
Now, there's one.
What is that, Ian?
It's not beginner products.
Oh, definitely not.
You don't take an inexperienced person, pop them into a dispensary and say, "Yeah, here's some edibles." Let them walk out with, few gummies here and there, and then they're driving home, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh,
yeah."
It's harder to regulate your dose.
Want to avoid.
Yeah.
But vaporization, I've been in vape lounges and stuff, and you can't smell it at all. I mean, vaporization, California's been pushing that for years because it's much safer than smoking. You're not taking in any kind of plant material, and the smell is not offensive. Like a lot of people, when they call me and they have problems with their landlord or something, I have to advise them to switch to edibles or vaporization or something as just like a stopgap. Unfortunately, in most places, But vape lounges would be great in a lot more places.
There's one consumption lounge up north, right? Isn't there one consumption? There's a consumption lounge.
There's actually quite a few. There's probably at least 20, 25 consumption lounges. There's several in San Francisco. There's one in Humboldt. They're starting to open up, and COVID kind of stalled it. But
well, when is LA going to get it together, Ian?
Well, we actually have a team working on pushing out more consumption lounges. Bruce Margolin.
More than zero?
Exactly. So we do have a little internal group that is working on pushing out more consumption lounges, and we have about 4 people on our team currently working on that right now to get more consumption.
Excellent.
It's really, this comes down to access. So much of all of this stuff comes down to access. Access covers many things. It covers where can I do this? It covers how much is this going to cost in taxes to do this? It really, access is a big part of it all.
Sure is.
And consumption lounges need to be safe environments where people can go. And
this became very clear when we had that vapey crisis a couple of years ago, when people were getting sick and actually dying from
the vitamin E being put into illegal vapes.
Which
illegal because they didn't have access. They didn't have access to the legal stuff. And so they were getting, or it was too expensive. And so we're for lowering taxes and regulation to keep, safe products in people's hands. But the education really worked around that and really getting at the problem and stuff. So it's critical. It's critically important to have safe access to it.
Just as a reminder, that whole vaping thing that happened, what we learned fairly quickly, I think, is what a lot of us knew instinctively, that this was not the licensed product that was being tested and put out in the licensed manner that California had dictated. This was stuff that was coming in from the sidelines. We didn't know who was manufacturing it, what was in it. And this turned out to be exactly what was going on. It was the untested products that were slipping in. And so this again goes to point out really how important it is to bring people into the licensed regulated market.
High taxes have kept the illicit market flourishing.
That's crazy. We have a massive illicit market here in California.
And high taxes and federal prohibition too, because if it was legal federally and it could be exported around the state and stuff, it would be a whole different thing.
You need to give out more licensing, honestly. There are many people in the illicit market that would love to be part of the regulated market, but they can't seem to get the license. So it's not like they're going to stop providing for their family while they wait for the state to give them a license. So we need to be giving out more licenses. We need to actively be bringing people to be part of this. We need to make sure that the taxes are reasonable, so when they come in to be part of the licensed market, it's affordable. They can pay their tax and be part of this process that California's put forward.
Absolutely. Let me ask a question that you guys, for national, and I know this isn't your jurisdiction.
Yeah. No, we work on that too.
How is it working with Joe Biden's administration? He doesn't seem too forward in this thinking on cannabis.
Well, we do, at California NORML and around the state, we help bring the California congressional delegation on board with things. In fact, I know LA NORML brought a co-sponsor on a bill recently, specifically. So, the Biden administration, Biden was not, he's been an anti-drug warrior for a long time. He's kind of come around, even on Sha'Carri Richardson, he said, maybe they ought to change the laws after a day of really intense advocacy. So, they do listen. He's taking a very middle ground just for rescheduling it to Schedule 2, because it's Schedule 1 right now, which means no accepted medical use. Schedule 2 would mean you could fill it out with all kinds of triplicate DEA paperwork or something. It's not at all where we're at today.
Listen, Joe, if you're listening, it's time to make legal cannabis available in the nation. Okay, Joe? And I love you, but you're a little bit wrong on this one. Okay. All right. So much for that.
And we should be pushing Kamala Harris too.
Yeah, come on. She's from California. She probably gets high.
She admitted that she did get high in college. Of course, she prosecuted people for it, which was her job to do. But she's been very good as a senator. She and many people have realized this is so racist, this drug war, and that's really brought a lot of people along, like Harris, who really weren't for us before. And I think that's one reason Sha'Carri Richardson's getting so much attention is support.
Why is the woman
aspect of it?
The woman that might be the fastest woman in the world in the 100-meter all of a sudden gets picked on? I'm not saying that everybody didn't get a test. Who
why
knows?
They tested her all of a sudden, or how exactly that went down.
It's just a little fishy.
But to what Ellen said, we're taking out some of our best and brightest.
Oh yeah,
our best our best people.
Well,
We are
we're taking out our
down the
planet.
state.
We're going to be gone.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, something resonated with me last week when it was announced that she wasn't going to go to the Olympics. The Onion, as we all know to be a satirical publication, did you see what they published that day? They said, holding her back from the Olympics, paraphrasing, holding her back from the Olympics represents America far greater than any gold medal ever could. And I was like, oh, yes, exactly. That's exactly right. We are putting it out there to the world that we're going to keep this woman back over trivial BS and not let our best and brightest participate. That says a lot about us.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah, the Jack Harry used to say other countries call us the land of the pea instead of the land of the free. Because really, we're the only country that urine tests its workers the way that we do. And people have just like lockstep gone for it, because we've trained little kids, you can't be on the chess team or a sports team unless you're drug tested in school and everything. And,
we need more unions.
People are swallowing the bull that this somehow makes us safer or a better country or something. And this is an extreme case where that is the absolute opposite of what's true.
Yeah. Well, I often wondered why the LAUSD didn't drug test its teachers, of which I was one for 25 years. But I sure was happy they didn't. But then I realized they would have lost probably 50% of their teachers.
Well, now some places they're trying to name safety sensitive positions that are exempt from the ban on drug testing as anyone who works with children. And so it may come back. Yes, I think the teachers union's strong, and there's not a reason to do it. But
people are realizing that a lot of people in everyday life and successful people are consumers. And if you want to be able to recruit the talent, you're not going to wipe out half of the applicants for this. I mean, Ellen, do you remember when the FBI announced that it would no longer, they would no longer consider past usage of marijuana a reason for not accepting them? It was a few years ago already. The FBI said, okay, not a big deal if you smoke, you can still work here, because they knew. And I think what that grew out of with the FBI, it grew out of the computer program. Yeah,
and didn't James Comey get high? Didn't he have his personal medical drug?
All the computer tech people were, consuming, and they were losing their best and brightest applicants. And I think a lot of people have started to realize that, that these stereotypes that have been pressed down on cannabis for generations, they're just not true. And we see a lot of successful people smoking cannabis. Let's point out Jeff Bezos, who Ellen, to Ellen's credit, said, "Hey, they're not testing for cannabis at Amazon."
At Amazon, yeah.
And
I guess hopefully that extends to Whole Foods.
Yeah, I think so. Nice. But Jeff's been known to consume, and you're hardly going to point to him and say, "Oh, he's a pothead, no good, not going to amount to anything guy." Come on.
So, some potheads are the most productive people in the world.
Yeah, they're not supported anymore.
Yeah. So when we were talking about your legislation, you have one of the most amazing websites, and you can get lost and spend days there. But
truly, you're exactly right. The Cal NORML website is exceptional.
It is exceptional. Yeah. And then there's this one section, Cal NORML's legislative goals. And I guess these, our listeners can't see that, but you want to talk about those legislative goals? Those are the upcoming goals, right? And we've talked about some of them already, I believe.
And the listeners should go look at CA NORML.
I guess I should.
We're going to put that link right here.
There this minute. I think we've talked about several of them.
We've talked about several of them.
You wanted to highlight?
Let me see here. We talked about the one that would allow more licensing and consumption lounges. You have, it starts off with Prop 215's goal of, safe and affordable distribution of medical marijuana, which is still ongoing. Stop unwarranted use of urine testing. You've done that. We've talked about that. Open up places where cannabis can be consumed. Reduce taxes on patients and small farmers.
Right.
How is that going? Is that
that's an uphill battle. Yeah. We had a bill for the last 2 years carried by Assemblyman Bonta, who's now our AG, to lower taxes, even temporarily, and we just couldn't convince enough legislators that, you know, the way to make more money is to charge less. You know, it just was, and you know, locals love to add on their tax, although there have been some local jurisdictions that have reduced their tax in order to be competitive with others. So we are seeing some market driving some of the taxation down. But it's, we don't even have a bill this year because when COVID happened and everything. But as it turns out, California still has a surplus in its budget this year, surprisingly, despite COVID and everything else. Yeah. So we may be able to get something through. You know, we'll try again next year. You know, it's 15% off the top excise tax for cannabis, and then locals are charging, you know, on top of that. The cultivation tax in particular, I think it's very unpopular.
Very onerous.
We'd like to see something restructured, like maybe around a potency-based tax or something. Because for one thing, you know, there's been a problem with testing. People are sort of like shopping for testing labs that give them better results on their THC. Oh, yeah. But if there was a potency tax, that would be a disincentive to doing that kind of thing, and it would help with the truth in labeling. Seriously, it's a real problem with CBD, which I haven't even gotten into. You know, all of that hemp and everything. There's you know, the FDA has done testing and found that CBD products are wildly mislabeled.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Not in dispensaries,
right?
Where
because
they have to have some testing, but
yeah, because they sell them out of dispensaries, and they're much less regulated out of the dispensary, right?
Well, they're regulated in the dispensary, but they're available in other places.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
There's no regulation. Yeah,
yeah. So under that, we have encourage licensing of small businesses, nonprofits, and agricultural co-ops so as to discourage monopolization and ownership concentration by large-scale, big money interests. Now, that one is a good one. How's that going?
I love that one, and it's like I said, in this capitalistic world, it's something. I mean, a lot of that's happening like on the local level. Like there was just a bill that allowed for what do you call it when you have a terroir, like a with wine, the wine in an appellation.
An appellation, yes, like Mendocino or Humboldt.
Yeah, you're now allowed to do appellations and things like that. We just did a legal seminar, and we had a whole session on the appellations, where if people could, because I always envisioned it more looking like, you know, Napa Valley or something once we legalized it or something, at least in the growing regions, like in the Emerald Triangle and stuff, instead of like large grows and things that, you know,
in the middle of the
grows or something.
Out by Palm Springs.
Because, right. And so that's one thing that we're supporting that might help with that sort of thing. But I don't have any experience in starting agricultural co-ops, but I have talked to some people about it. So if anyone listening has some experience or ideas about how we can make that particular piece happen. The nonprofits, BCC was required to do a report on nonprofits, and we pushed for them to,
the Bureau of Cannabis Control.
Talk to the researchers that were doing it, because this was a compromise that was put into Prop 64, because at the time there were a lot of nonprofits, collectively growing, right? And it's still the case. You can grow for 5 patients if no money's exchanged in state law, but locals are still interfering with that. Anyway, they finally did the nonprofit report, but then I realized, there's nothing in the law that requires them to publish the nonprofit report. So they still haven't published it.
Yeah.
This is, the slow wheels of government. But SB 64 is helping some for the people who can afford to give it away. But really, what had been happening up till then, it wasn't in Prop 215, but it was in subsequent legislation that we passed, SB 420, that we advocated for, these agricultural cooperatives and stuff. And those have really gone by the wayside now with the licensing. And call the BCC, everybody, and ask them to put out that report that was done on the nonprofits, because that might help, jumpstart something where we could get back to that model for the people who can't afford it, especially the patients who can't afford it otherwise. But in the meantime, SB 34 is having some success helping with that, and we did advocate for that very strongly.
And when we say nonprofits, we're talking about who?
Well, you know how there used to be like these collectives, nonprofits, like
medical marijuana.
Was one. Yeah. And there are in the locals can do some nonprofits and stuff, but so that's a big bullet point that is going to require a lot of. For example, there's a bill now, Prop 64, there was not supposed to be any cultivation over an acre in Prop 64. And this is how it was voted in. And it was, sold to the public as this is going to help small businesses and stuff. Well, what happened is locals were allowed to license stack. So an entity could have more than one. And also they were allowed to stack the micro business license, which is what I was really hoping would keep the small business in business, because it was vertically integrated. You could grow it, you could sell it. And again, I'm thinking like a Napa wine model, you could have a little tasting room or something. Well, again, people stacked those and then they vertically integrated, and all the dispensaries are growing their own and these huge grows and everything. So there's a bill now pending that has had a lot of, and I just put it out last week in my email. People can sign up at canormal.org for my weekly email. There's a bill pending that there's a lot of kerfuffle about these provisional licenses. Most of the cannabis business is still working under these provisional licenses, and there's legislation to try to extend those because they all have to get CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, authorization to get a full license. And locals, this is a way locals are stymieing it because they're putting all kinds of roadblocks up to getting that approval. So there's part of the bill as it's written would disallow these grows of over 1 acre to continue to operate under provisional licensing, as a lot of them are. And we're supporting that. But there's a lot of industry opposition to that by these big companies and sometimes the unions that are organizing in these bigger companies. And so pay attention to that. I'll send you something about that, Vince.
Okay.
If you want to see what's going to happen with that. That's been punted to, that's probably, they were hoping to get that done last week, which was the end of the certain legislative session. And then they're going to go on recess, and then they're going to be back in August. And then they're probably going to have to take that up again in August. So, yeah.
And so how does that affect LA, Ian?
Sorry, I was on mute there. Sorry, ask that again, please, Vincent.
Oh, I was just wondering, how is the effort to keep large corporations from taking over down here in LA?
I think most people are scared of the large corporations, obviously. This has been for a very long time a small mom and pop sort of thing, and now you have big MSOs that are coming in. So how's that affecting LA? We got plenty of big MSOs here in LA. We're pretty spread out community, obviously. So I think we have a lot of smaller organizations, companies all across the Southland that really are getting, a fair amount of the market that's going on. I think people are definitely concerned about MSOs coming in, or big operators coming in and putting too much of a corporate feel on this. For sure, I think there's concerns there.
So you're LA normal,
Yes.
right? Yeah, but is there like a San Diego normal and a San Bernardino?
Really, the way that NORML's been structured from the very early days is at the local level, like us here in Los Angeles, at the state level, like Ellen, California NORML, and then the national NORML. So yeah, there's definitely, I think chapters spring up around the country when you get a group of people that are motivated, as we talked about earlier, to volunteer their time. And we've been lucky here in Los Angeles that we have a massive population. And as well, we have a massive amount of the industry happening right here in LA. It's probably the largest market on the entire planet. And so we've been lucky to have a good talent pool of experienced people to pull from here in Los Angeles to constitute up the team. And it really is local action, going out locally. What can we do here in LA? There is, so in Southern California, we have Orange County NORML, which I will give a huge shout out to them. They've been advocating in Orange County, I think going on 18 years now. They have quite an amazing track record, and they have quite a challenge in front of them. I think there are 57 cities in Orange County, and like less than 5 of them are allowing any sort of cannabis. It's really minuscule.
Yeah.
Ellen said that 2/3 of California doesn't allow for cannabis, but in Orange County, it's far greater than that.
It's very conservative in Orange County.
Conservative. So there's a licensing task force in Orange County that's going out to the cities, who are starting to recognize now that their bars and restaurants didn't kick back too much city taxes last year, right? But what did do well was cannabis, as we talked about. And so
I'm sure it did.
There's a licensing task force at Orange County NORML that's going out and telling the cities, hey, look, cannabis has been essential. You saw how well it did last year. Why aren't you allowing it here in your city? So there's a San Diego NORML, there's an Inland Empire NORML, and there is San Diego, LA, Orange County. I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry, I'm homeschooling.
Okay, that's okay.
Homeschooling's been a real
my
thing.
son is out. His tutor is here, right?
Yeah, I got little kids in the background, and they're constantly coming up. Daddy, we need this. So it's the great thing about the pandemic is that all of us have learned an acceptance for that sort of thing. It's a balance of work and life all at the same time. So there is a lot of energy in Southern California for NORML, people coming together and volunteering.
Well, thank God.
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah. And that leads me to a question I had just kind of popped in my head. It was like, so NORML's in 50 states. Ellen, where'd your camera go? Are you on a break, NORML? Ellen? A NORML break?
She's here. I think she's
Abby NORML?
There are.
Okay. Let me phrase this again. So there's 50 states, and there probably is 50 state chapters of NORML, right? But it's hard for me to imagine a NORML chapter in Arkansas.
There are. I'm not quite sure if there really are a full 50 chapters. To your point, there are some states where you don't have any industry, you don't have anything happening, but you probably do have a few activists that are involved.
Advocating for patients and people that get hassled, locked up.
Arkansas has a medical marijuana law, and they have, unlike California, they actually have employment protections for their patients. So
you know what? I didn't mean to say Arkansas, but I'm just, I'm thinking some far off state in the South or the Midwest.
And hey, I'm really sorry, Vince, but I actually have to jump off. I've got another goal I've got to do.
You know what? We can.
For an hour.
We'll get back and do more. How long have we been going here? We've been going for an hour and 11 minutes.
Yeah.
You put
Sorry.
back
that's okay.
You can still keep talking to Ian if you'd like to.
I'll talk to Ian for a few minutes here, and and then we'll end it up. But we'll get back together again, and what I mean.
Great.
We'll stay current with you guys, and
very much appreciate
and help try to get the word out. My Cali High is growing. We don't have 1 million listeners yet.
I want to give a big shout out there to Ellen and California NORML for all of their support. For the local chapters around California. It's truly, as you mentioned, their website is just spectacular for information. So we're constantly going there ourselves, looking for our state updates and always looking to them for the leadership, and really, really appreciate having awesome people like Ellen involved there, keeping us on target with our state level activities.
Thanks, Ellen. So that leads me to another question. I was looking at the website, and did I see something about a directory, like a directory of dispensaries and where to find medical marijuana and recreational marijuana? And does that do you guys competing with Weed Maps now? Or they're competing with you?
With Weed Maps. That's a tall order, but there is actually a list on I'm not on the website right now, but I do believe that there's a list of resources like attorneys and businesses that are supportive of California NORML, and there are some dispensaries listed, I believe. Yeah, it's a great website, canorml.org. Please go check it out. Tons and tons of information.
Yes. And there was one other thing I found on there. What was this?
And I'd really like to encourage listeners to go and to be a part of NORML. If you're anywhere in the state of California, you do have a vested interest in supporting, and you're a consumer, you absolutely have a vested interest in supporting California NORML and our state level initiatives to reform the marijuana laws and achieve really what we all need as consumers. This takes money. This takes support. People should really go.
We all need to support NORML.
Yeah, honestly, if you're out there buying cannabis, throw a couple dollars to NORML every month. Help support the efforts to keep this going for us and to reform these laws in a way that works within our communities. So that's really important.
Exactly.
Go to canorml.org, sign up to be a supporting member. Consider donating something every month. It's small money, but if we all do it, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And so I noticed on your website there is a hotline. Who would use the hotline and for what?
It's a good question. I didn't know we had a hotline. Oh, there goes my cell phone now. I don't know who's answering the phone on the hotline.
Okay, it says Cal NORML's hotline, 415-563-5858, has been in continuous operation since 1972. Wow. And we answer calls from the public, press, and government officials there and through our website and Facebook pages. Interesting. And then, so then you have Marketplace Direct. Yeah. Okay. But you know what else? The mission statement, I think, should be read to our listeners. I'm probably putting you on the spot again, Ian. You probably don't have the mission statement in front of you, but I think it's really cool. Do you have it?
California NORML?
I think it's just,
Let me look for it. I know that we have our Los Angeles NORML mission statement on our homepage. Here we go.
Well, you want to read that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'd like to hear the LA NORML mission statement.
Let me get to it. Here we go. Yes. What Los Angeles NORML, one of the oldest chapters in the country. Los Angeles NORML was founded in 1973. We are a regional chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. We support NORML's mission to repeal the prohibition of marijuana at the local, state, and federal level by educating those in our community about marijuana and hemp and their potential medical and industrial use while promoting the responsible use of marijuana by adults. That is our mission statement at Los Angeles NORML. Fairly similar. Oh, I did.
Let me read
the California one here if you want.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm going to let you read that one too.
Founded in 1972, so 1 year older than Los Angeles NORML. Founded in 1972, California NORML is a nonprofit membership organization dedicated to reforming California's marijuana laws. We are the only state organization advocating for sensible and fair cannabis laws and regulations on behalf of consumers. We lobby lawmakers, promote events, publish newsletters, offer legal and consumer health advice, and sponsor scientific research. It's a mission statement from California NORML.
Well, that is a great mission statement. So is the LA one. Anyway, well, Ian, I want to thank
across
you.
the country.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we've gone on a little bit longer than expected, Ian, and I want to thank you very much. Cali High thanks you, and we will be checking back in with NORML on the city, state, and hopefully national levels soon. And we'll be putting out some words for you. Now, when is that party coming up that Ellen was talking
A
about?
party. Well, listen, we can have a party anytime you want.
We're going to put that information
Yes.
right here. Okay. All right. Ian, I hope to see. Oh, you're going to send me the local parties, right? You're having some local events, and you're going to send me information
We
for
do
that?
have a lot of local events. Things are starting to change a little.
Okay.
We've been virtual for quite a while now, but we're just starting to get back into regular local events here in the Los Angeles area. You can come check out our website, lanormal.org. We do keep an updated list of activities that are around Southern California. So if you are in Southern California, come check that out. Please do, again, go to canormal.org. Consider being a card-carrying member of NORML. It's really, really important to support this organization. It's an all-volunteer organization. The power comes from the people. It's important to remember.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you very much, and I support your efforts 100%.
Just by having us here, you are supporting these efforts, and truly, we're very, very appreciative of that.
Well, I'm grateful myself. Thank you very much for all that you've done, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Vincent.